and they're dealing with tremendous volume. In Florida, Democratic incumbent Bill Nelson has moved within 0.5% of Governor Rick Scott. The narrow gap likely will trigger an automatic recount. Earlier tonight, however, Governor Scott accused Democratic county officials of working to swing the results against him.
We've all seen the incompetence and the irregularities in vote tabulations in Broward and Palm Beach for years. Well, here we go again. I will not sit idly by while unethical liberals try to steal this election from the great people of Florida.
And, oh, look, he's getting air support from the White House. Just a while ago, the president added this on Twitter. Law enforcement is looking into another big corruption scandal having to do with election fraud in Broward and Palm Beach. Florida voted for Rick Scott. That's the president of the United States. The Florida governor's race is now also within the margin for a recount, but because the Democrat Andrew Gillum conceded, our network's designation stands as apparent winner for Ron DeSantis. In the state next door, Republican Brian Kemp resigned today as Georgia Secretary of State, conveniently declaring himself the winner of the state's race for governor. His opponent, however, the Democrat Stacey Abrams, currently trails by about 60,000 votes, but her campaign says she's going to stay in this until every ballot is counted. Meanwhile, the scope of the Democrats' dominance in the House is still today coming into focus. Just today, NBC News called Democrats Katie Hill the apparent winner in California House 25, Kim Schreier the apparent winner, Washington State House 8, Lucy McBath the apparent winner in Georgia House 6. That was the seat Ossoff tried but failed to win for the Dems during the special election last year, the seat that had been held by Republicans since 1979, when that young man, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, won it. 11 House seats remain undecided, but here's the number that snuck up on people who went to bed on election night and haven't checked back in since. The Democrats have already gained a net 30 seats in the House. Another way of looking at it, 317 congressional districts swung toward the left on Tuesday. Well, joining us tonight, Democratic Congresswoman Jackie Speer of California. Her new book, Undaunted, Surviving Jonestown, Summoning Courage and Fighting Back, is available now, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But, Congresswoman, looking at the results, how do you think your party should play it, recognizing that parties have played a sudden accumulation of power wrongly in the past?
Well, first, we have to have a very specific plan that we are going to execute on day one. We've been articulating it all through the campaign. That is securing the Affordable Care Act, securing protection for pre-existing conditions, making sure that the prescription drug benefits can be reduced in terms of the cost of prescription drugs, doing an infrastructure bill, and dealing with the corruption of this administration. Those are our marching orders, and I expect that we are going to execute on them.
You tweeted this yesterday about the departure of Sessions, firing Sessions and replacing him with a man who has repeatedly publicly talked about the ways the Attorney General could shut down the special counsel's case, or as he calls it, the Mueller lynch mob, puts us firmly into constitutional crisis territory. Whitaker must immediately recuse himself. My question is, what if he's here to stay? What if there's absolutely no plan to move him?
Well, then the question becomes, to what extent is he going to try to reduce the Mueller investigation by shutting down the budget, by trying to remove him, by tampering with the evidence? And that's when we need to step in a very forceful manner. I also think that the special counsel is a very smart man, and he has anticipated all of these actions. I'm certain that the attorneys will go to court, much like they did with the Watergate situation when President Nixon attempted to take all of the documentation and bring it under his control. They will go to the courts to make sure that that documentation, that evidence is held appropriately. So there are steps that can be taken. There's steps that the House Democrats can take to subpoena Special Counsel Mueller if he is in fact removed from office. There is ways that we can make sure there's proper funding. So I'm confident that even though Mr. Whitaker, who is now the acting Attorney General, may in fact be there under unconstitutional grounds, because under Article 2, Section 2, as you pointed out earlier in your show, really requires the advice and consent by the Senate for any principal officer, and he is certainly a principal officer, being defined as someone who is only directly responsible to the president.
Our viewers may not know something about you, and I think I'm correct that you have the unusual distinction of having the most bullet wounds of any member of Congress, and here's why. An event in our history, the year after I graduated from high school, 1978, called Jonestown. Its lasting effect in our culture, it left us with the phrase, drinking the Kool-Aid. But as more and more people come up behind the generation in charge now, fewer and fewer people know the story. It was a religious cult. You flew down as a young aide to Congressman Leo Ryan, and right before the largest mass suicide in contemporary history, over 900 people drank poison Kool-Aid. You went out to the airport. There was gunfire. There was a massacre. If I'm not mistaken, you were shot 5 times, waited 22 hours for medical attention. Talk about the part of that that lives with you, because gun violence, for one, is in our news on a daily basis.
Well, gun violence is a scourge in this country. 12,000 deaths already this year, tens of thousands probably who have been injured.